Good evening. This is Carla from Rehan Allahwala's World of Connections. And today I am here to speak to David Passiak from Farmington Hills, Michigan. And he has started a page on Facebook group called Empathy Flow. And he is also now doing coaching to help people feel more comfortable with themselves and with the world around them. Having said that, I want to remind you that this show is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. David, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So first of all, Carla, thank you so much for inviting me, and hello to everyone out there that's watching us live or that may be watching a recording of this. I'm grateful to share my story with you. So I'm David Passiak. I founded a group called Empathy Flow on Facebook. So if you're watching this on Facebook, please connect with us there, as well as a company called Flow Coach. So Flow Coach, we focus on teaching practices to raise your energy, to lower stress, to have more focus, to more creativity, more productivity. It's different than typical approaches to teaching meditation or yoga or things like that, where we focus on the context or the problem that you might have. And then we teach you the right practice to do at the right time based upon what you need. So for example, you might be really stressed out. We'll teach you a practice to lower your stress, to connect with your breath, to connect with your subconscious. We might, if you are working on something creative, we might teach you a practice to raise your creativity or your vision or your focus. If you're going to be going on stage and speaking or doing something where you need to raise your energy and be really kind of more upbeat or stuff like that, we'll teach you practices around that. So we're teaching a system of practices that are based upon your needs and the types of challenges that you might encounter in life.
Okay, can we go back a little and find out a little about you?
Sure.
You live in Farmington, Michigan. Were you born in Michigan?
So I'm back in Michigan now. I have kind of a different story than I think a lot of people that do the type of work that I do. So I actually started off my career as a religion scholar. So I'm originally from Michigan. I went to Michigan State for undergrad, went to Arizona State for a master's degree, and then went to Princeton for PhD studies. And I studied things like the 60s counterculture, the civil rights movement, how mass movements grow and spread. I also looked at the Western fascination with the East and Eastern fascination with the West, and how we kind of go back and forth and share different ideas and perspectives. And then I studied a lot how these big mass movements grow and spread. Then went from doing that to doing that for different types of brands. And then over the course of the last 10, 12 years, I've evolved from being a scholar to then building movements. And then over the last 10, 12 years, I've written 4 books, and my work is focused on empathy, co-creation, collaboration, teaching people how to flow, these types of things, a lot of community building stuff.
When you say flow, what do you mean?
So I think of flow as the really our true nature. So I think a lot of times we become attached to different roles or different things that we should do, or we become attached to this kind of limited sense of who we are. And flow is really about connecting the heart, mind, and body. It's about a sense of kind of continuity within the self. And then when you're able to connect with your heart, mind, and body, when you're able to understand the source of your emotions and your thinking, your creativity, you're also able to understand those things in other people as well. So there's a way in which when you're in connection with yourself, you're able to understand the needs of other people. And so that's where empathy really comes in.
And how do you, I mean, most people can define empathy, but how do you define empathy?
So I think of empathy as the ability to put yourself in the, to try and view and appreciate the world and the feelings and the perspectives from the perspective of someone else. So that requires deep listening. So a lot of times in conversations, people are just waiting for their turn to speak. They're not really even listening to what the person is saying. So empathy really starts with a sense of deep listening. What is this person trying to communicate to me? Also, it's looking at verbal communication as well as body language, and really trying to understand. A lot of times people might say one thing and they're really trying to communicate something else, and trying to appreciate what is that person's perspective, where are they coming from, what is their background, what is their agenda, and then how based upon all of that, how can I help that person, or how can we mutually support and help each other?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, what got you to this point? Because, we all have a journey that gets us to doing what we want to do and finding our passion. Can you tell us a little about your journey, please?
Sure. So I would say that there were a couple of crisis points in my life that ultimately led me to where I'm at right now. The first was when I was around 19, 20 years old. I had a lot of kind of unprocessed trauma, and a lot of issues came up. I was experiencing terrible panic and anxiety attacks. Around the same time, my younger sister and my only sibling, Katie, committed suicide. So there was all this stuff going on. And when I went to see doctors for the terrible panic and anxiety attacks, they wanted to give me all this medication. And I remember thinking that at the time, I had been coping with the stress and stuff by, drinking and doing other stuff. And I thought, I knew deep down that I was experiencing these things because I was kind of overwhelmed. And so from my perspective, the solution was not to try and give me drugs or things to blunt out the feelings. I felt that I really need to understand what was going on inside of me. And so that's what led me to start studying religion. The study of religion in the university is a lot different than the study of religion out in the world. So you study all world religions, you study philosophy, psychology, anthropology, sociology. What that training really gave me all different types of lenses through which I could understand what was going on inside of me. And then ultimately, I became interested in meditation and flow practices, initially because I wanted to help myself. So I wanted to understand what was the source of all these kind of panic and anxiety attacks that I was having, really trying to understand some of the things that I had experienced. And then in going through that, I started to see that there were certain contexts where I would be triggered. I might have anxiety, and I would realize there were certain practices that I could do to deal with that. So it might be that I would do a breathing practice. It might be that I would do some type of movement practice. I started to kind of piece together a way of kind of healing myself. I also learned that when I was home, that I could do different types of practices to allow the emotions to come up. And I realized that a lot of trauma and healing is about letting go of deep kind of complex emotions. I think one of the challenges is that our conscious self is not able to, like, we want to tell stories. So the way that we navigate our way through the world is by telling stories. We tell stories in our heads. We tell stories to each other. And when you experience trauma or you experience go through something difficult, you have all sorts of different complex emotions. And it's hard to tell a simple story around those. And so there's a way in which you get kind of emotionally stuck sometimes. And somehow you have to kind of let go of that. You have to go deeper than the story. So you have to go deeper within yourself and your subconscious. Now, that may sound kind of abstract, but there's a way in which we can kind of connect with who we are on a deeper level. And when we're able to do that, that's ultimately very liberating and freeing. So that was, I think, that was the initial start of my journey. I initially thought that I was going to build an academic career. So I went back to school and then got a master's and went to Princeton for PhD studies. My first week at Princeton, 9/11 happened. So I was, Princeton is an hour outside of New York City, and I was in a Religions of the Americas program. And I remember just feeling totally alienated and kind of lost at all of the things that were happening. And over the next 3 years, I was involved in the protests leading up to the invasion of Iraq. And I felt like I didn't want to be in some type of ivory tower setting. I really felt like I needed to be somehow out in the world and working to be an advocate for peace and change, instead of sort of in a kind of ivory tower setting where I couldn't really talk about these things very much. So ultimately, I left Princeton. For a year, I ran a religion and conflict resolution program at a place called the Tannenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding, where we worked to pair religiously motivated peacemakers with people at the UN. And then I started realizing that Facebook and YouTube and blogging and all these things were starting to become popular. And I realized that was kind of the future of storytelling and media and community building. And so I shifted into doing that work. Then I ran social media for Volkswagen and a bunch of big brands. I had a sort of really quick change in career where in my second year of working, I was a director in a big advertising agency and was working with some of the biggest brands in the world with only about 2 years of work experience. And then around 2008, 2009, the economy crashed. And I saw that as being really driven by greed and a lot. And I felt like American greed crashed the global economy. That was sort of and I felt like I didn't want to have a job just trying to sell a bunch of things that people didn't need. So eventually I quit my job running this advertising agency, and I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand and traveled around in Southeast Asia and India. And that's when I wrote my first book. And I've been doing a lot of the community building stuff since then.
And what is the name of your first book?
The name of my first book is called Red Bull to Buddha. So the title comes from when I first got to Thailand. I went to Chiang Mai. So Chiang Mai is the second biggest city in Thailand. Chiang Mai means walled city. So Chiang Mai is a historic city that's covered by brick walls. And historically, the Thais and the Burmese used to always fight over the city. And it's like every time one one of them conquered it, they would build a big Buddhist temple inside. And so Chiang Mai is filled with all of these amazing Buddhist temples going back over 1,000 years. So I was walking around Chiang Mai and I went into a temple, and there was I saw a bunch of glasses with little bottles of Red Bull in them, and they were as offerings for the Buddha. And I thought, this is really fascinating because, of course, as a Westerner, I think of Red Bull as something that someone would drink at a nightclub, or extreme athletes, or it's, super, fast energy. You don't think of that as being something that you would offer as a devotion in Buddhism. And so, but actually Red Bull is originally from Thailand, and the farmers and people working in factories would drink it. And so offering Red Bull to the Buddha is like offering sustenance, so it actually, in that context, it makes sense. So the idea of Red Bull to Buddha, that story is about how something can have a different meaning based upon the context or where it is.
And that's very interesting because I talk about that on my English show all the time, that we see words in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I never knew that Red Bull, I've never had it, came from Thailand. Do you know much about that?
Well, my understanding is that there was a European entrepreneur visited. I think my understanding is a European entrepreneur went to Thailand and encountered the drink, and then eventually ended up creating a deal with the family there, and then worked on licensing it and exporting it. So the Red Bull company, I think, is based in Austria, and then the original company is in Thailand. So it's kind of marketed differently in Thailand. It looks differently. It's sold in Thailand in like it looks like medicine bottles, or like cough syrup bottles, like these little brown bottles. A lot different than the silver cans that are sold in the West, but it's basically the same product.
And it was developed in Thailand? Was it more?
It was originally in Thailand, yeah.
Was it a type of medicine at that point? Or
It was a kind of energy drink. People just drink it like they would a soda.
And when was this developed?
I don't know when it was originally developed in Thailand. There's an interesting story about how it was marketed in the West, though. When they first started out, they didn't have enough Red Bull to put in stores. So what they would do is they would go to nightclubs, and they would give cans of it to the people that were working at the door, and then they would crumple up empty cans and they would throw them in the bathroom. And so people walking around the nightclub would see the people at the front. They would see the people working there drinking Red Bull, and they would see the empty cans in the bathrooms, and they started asking for it. And that was actually how their initial buzz marketing started working. They started building this buzz around this new drink that before it was even in the stores.
Wow, that really is fascinating.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Do they call it Red Bull, or?
Yeah, they call it Red Bull. Yeah.
Fascinating. I never thought of it. I always thought it was from here, and never had it though. Have you tried it?
I have. I'm personally quite sensitive to caffeine and stimulants, so it doesn't really work with my body.
Yeah,
I don't drink any caffeine.
neither do I. That's why wow. Now, your empathy flow, how did you get that started?
Well, so last year, when I was I came to Thailand last year again, and I had a job as the head of marketing for what was going to be the largest innovation conference in Asia. So we wanted to get 20,000 people to come to Bangkok. And then, of course, when COVID happened, that conference was canceled. So I was in Thailand when the pandemic started. And then around that time, I got really sick. So I had all sorts of issues with my digestive system. I ended up in bed for about 3 months. Doctors were saying that I should recommending I have surgery, or that I do, I'll take all types of pharmaceutical medication. And I decided that ultimately that I was not going to do that. That I felt like if I always believed my whole life in the power of the body to heal, and the power of our subconscious and our subconscious mind. And I felt like I had the innate power within me to heal. And so I decided ultimately to not follow the doctor's advice. I put myself on a really strict diet, and I lost about 15 kilos, about 35 pounds. And I ultimately ended up totally healing myself naturally through doing these different flow practices and through a healthy diet. And as I started coming out of that, it was like the pandemic was starting to get under control in Bangkok, and it was starting to spread to the West. And I felt like there was a need for empathy. There was a need for people to have a safe space. There was so much negative, there was all this fear and anxiety and terrible news, and everyone was just talking about how the world's going to end and all this type of stuff. And in that context, I felt like there really needed to be this safe space for people to share positive stories and positive information and kind of uplift and connect with each other. And so that's how I started the group. The group eventually, kept growing. I think we have about 3,000 members now, a little over 3,000 members now. We did a conference last year as well, a one-day conference with over 45 speakers. And I felt like that work was really meaningful and really needed.
So you started that, and tell our audience a little about the content there, and then we'll get into empathy coaching.
Sure. So the Facebook group is mostly it's stories of inspiring news, inspiring stories of people helping each other, different types of positive quotes. I really think of it as a space where people can get inspired, or they feel like they can connect, focus around kindness, compassion, love, caring for each other. I think that I think that's really what the world needs right now. I personally believe that compassion, kindness, love, understanding, that's our true nature. That we get attached to things outside of ourselves, and we sort of, a lot of times we lose sight of what's most important. So I think of empathy flow as a group for people to kind of connect with who they are, and then hopefully do the same type of thing in the world.
Wow. And how long has it been in circulation on Facebook?
It's been a little over a year now.
And it grew that fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was Personally, I looked at my English group and I was like amazed with how many people have participated. So you have the Facebook group. What made you decide to go into coaching about empathy?
Well, to be honest with you, when I was really sick last year, I was laying in bed, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, if I get through this, I am not going to keep doing marketing and community building and the types of stuff that I was doing before. I really felt like it was my time to teach people how to be better. And the practices that I'm teaching were the practices that help me to heal when I was in my 20s, and then helped me heal again when I was in my 40s. The practices I've really been doing my entire life. What I've learned is that things like meditation or breathing or yoga or qigong, these different types of practices, they're taught from a traditional perspective going back for centuries or potentially thousands of years, where one master passes it down to another, and the way that they're traditionally taught is that there's this sort of my way is the way to do things. And actually, different practices are more like different tools. So if I need to be more calm and focused, but I don't want to be too relaxed, there's certain practices that I can do to be calm and focused, but I won't get too tired. Or if I need to go on stage and I need to, raise my energy because I'm going to be in front of 1,000 people or something, there's a practice I can do for that. And so I started to kind of think about flow and practices from the perspective of design thinking and innovation, which is the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years, where you start with a problem and you think about what is the solution that I need for that problem. And so thinking about practice as sort of like in context, it's like, how do I need to feel now, or what is the challenge that I'm facing, and what is the practice that I need to do to address that challenge?
So are you developing practices on a daily basis, or?
So in January, I'm releasing my first course, which I'm calling the Flow Life Design System, which is a system of 20 practices. So there's 4 parts. There's 4 parts to it. The first part is how to lower your stress or be calm. So the average CEO spends 30% of their time trying to deal with unexpected crisis. So the first thing I really want to teach people is how to lower your stress, how to be more calm and focused so you can stop reacting to things that are going on around you. And then the next 3 parts, there's a focus on the heart. So practices around empathy, love, compassion. The heart is also where the source of products and solutions. So in design thinking, when you try to innovate or come up with a new product, you start by trying to understand the problems that someone is facing. What are your problems? What are you struggling with? And then how can I help you? So we start in the heart, and that's also the starting point for products and services. Then I teach practices around creativity, around focus, around strategy. So you think of creativity and the things in your mind. That's also the area of storytelling. So storytelling is also similar to marketing. So as you move from the heart into the head, you're moving from product into marketing. And then when you think of raising your energy and having an impact and stuff like that, those types of practices, that's what you're doing with sales. So you can think of the heart, mind, and body as it relates to how companies work in terms of developing product marketing and sales, types of roles that people have in their daily lives. So the idea is really teaching people these practices so they can better deal with challenges in their professional life, their personal and professional life.
Okay. And are you excited about this?
Yeah, it feels to me like my life has kind of come full circle. So I started off my career in my 20s studying these types of practices. So studying comparative religion, studying meditation, yoga, pranayama, these different types of practices, how people practice them all throughout the world. Then I went into about 15 years of working in innovation and community building, tech and entrepreneurship. I wrote 4 books related to that. I did speaking all over the world. And now I'm sort of combining all of those things in a system that's really kind of designed for entrepreneurs and innovators and people. What I found is that a lot of times people, especially now with COVID, everyone's kind of working remotely. I found that the first year of working remotely is kind of like the honeymoon period. It's like everyone's sort of excited. They don't have to go into the office anymore. But after a while, people can experience loneliness. They can experience anxiety. 50% of remote workers have issues that they struggle with in mental health. So my hope is that these practices will help remote workers to better connect with their heart, their mind, and body, and feel more a sense of balance and freedom. So I feel like it's kind of, my work has sort of come full circle, and this is probably the most exciting thing that I've worked on in my life.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Are you beginning to get clients, or is it slow going?
So we haven't launched the courses yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll be launching them in January. So I've continued doing some. I do some smaller one-on-one coaching, but my real focus is on doing the courses and scaling that impact.
Now, when I first met you, you were very sick, and we talked for a moment about healing. What did you do to heal yourself during that time? You may not be able to discuss it, but.
So first I called it developing what I called it inside out diet. So I did a lot of research on what are the ingredients that were best for my digestive system and my immune system. In my case, it was, I ate mostly dark green vegetables, a lot of fish and chicken. I found that I had a hard time digesting carbohydrates, and I developed a lot of allergies. So I had trouble eating rice or flour. I had to cut out all carbohydrates, all sugar, and I pretty much only drank water. And so I ate that very strict diet for 3 months, and I added a bunch of supplements. And then I also did all of these different energy and flow practices every day.
And how much?
I would do visualization practices of my body healing. So your conscious mind is only 10% of who you are. 90% of what you do is subconscious. And I believe that I got sick because I was stressed out. I was not eating well. I did a lot of things that sort of alienated myself from my subconscious, and my body basically rejected all foods. it's like my body was saying, David, we've had enough of what you're doing. We've had enough of your stress and your lifestyle stuff. And so part of my healing journey was doing energy practices to say, to kind of like tell my subconscious, chill out, stop, when I eat this, don't treat what I'm going to eat like it's poison and want to throw up or, have pain or something like that. Like it was like I had to convince myself to start accepting food. I had to convince myself that what I was eating was going to nourish me and replenish me. I truly believe that healing, a big part of healing is reconciling your conscious and your subconscious. A big part of it is sort of getting connected with who you are and really, giving yourself the best things that you can and the things that your body really needs. Everyone's body is unique and different. For example, I personally would really like to eat a vegetarian diet because of the type of impact that eating meat can have on the environment. But my body won't tolerate most legumes. It won't tolerate most vegetable proteins. It's very hard for me to eat that way. So you have to do a lot of research and figure out what works for your body.
Yeah, I'm more vegetarian than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that by being vegetarian, for some reason, I begin to gain weight. So I need to figure out what is the best mode that I should be eating.
Yeah, I learned when you're eating the best things for your body, I've also I just found that everything kind of works better. I have more energy. I have more excitement. A lot of the emotional issues that I may have had, I was really stressed out. I was kind of struggling with anxiety and depression because I had, at the beginning of last year, I lost my job, and then COVID was happening, and I was in another country. I didn't know where I was going to go, how I was going to make money. All this stuff came up. And then ultimately, all of those external stressors, it's like if you don't deal with the stress, your body will absorb it. And when your body absorbs that stress, that's when you start having potential really bad health problems.
True. That I know to be true. And we need to be very careful of how we feed our bodies and what we do with our bodies, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know that we are coming to the end of this because you were concerned about making dinner. Are you the cook in the house?
No, not tonight.
So you have other people in the house with you?
Yes.
Okay. With that, are there any words of wisdom you would like to leave our audience with?
First of all, I would say don't think of what you do in life transactionally. So really focus on serving other people, focus on giving, focus on empathy, focus on helping and understanding the needs of other people. What you'll find is that when you focus on empathy and helping other people, eventually you'll find something that you're good at, and you'll find something that people will actually want to pay you money for. So by helping others, eventually that will lead to creating a business or a career path that is both helping other people as well as helping yourself. I really feel like success is a function of helping other people. So I would say that is, don't think about life transactionally, focus on helping and giving. If you focus on helping and giving, everything will ultimately come back to you. The second thing I would say is that think about if you're thinking about things like meditation or flow, or how you might take care of yourself emotionally, focus not on like trying to learn a particular practice, but focus on the issues that you're dealing with and what might be the best thing to help with that. And that's basically what I'm going to be teaching in the new year. If that's interesting to you, please, both of those things, please join. One, please join our Facebook group, Empathy Flow. Everyone who's listening is welcome to that, and we'll leave a link for that. And also, if you're interested in the work on flow, please become a fan of Flow Coach and follow up there for more information. Thanks so much for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful for the chance to share my story. And thanks also to everyone who's still listening. If you've listened to the end, thanks so much for your time. I know that there's a million things you can do in your day, and I appreciate you taking the time out to listen to this.
Thank you so much for what you said. Now I don't have to say it, but I appreciate the fact that you came and gave me your time and spoke with me. And I appreciate the people who have been watching and the people who will be watching on the replay. And I want to remind everyone that this show is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. Do you want to wave goodbye with me, David?
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
A lot of times I call it the virtual high five. I go like this.
A lot of people do that. I haven't been, but thank you. And with that, we are going